I never thought of myself as someone capable of revenge. Growing up, I was always the peacemaker, the one who forgave quickly and moved on. But that was before Emily stole everything from me. It started 3 years ago when I hired her as my assistant at Morgan Creative, the boutique marketing agency I had built from the ground up. I was 34, recently divorced, and finally seeing the fruits of my labor. After 7 years of long nights, risky loans, and sacrifice weekends, my client list included several well-known national brands. I had a team of 12 talented people, a stylish office in downtown Chicago, and a reputation for cutting-edge campaigns that got results. Emily was 27, ambitious, and impressively qualified on paper. Her portfolio showed creativity and technical skill, and during her interview, she spoke passionately about admiring my work from afar. She claimed Morgan Creative was exactly the kind of agency she had always dreamed of joining. "I have followed your career for years," she told me, eyes wide with what I now realize was carefully manufactured adoration. "The Williams campaign you did last year? Pure genius. I would be honored to learn from you." I was flattered. I was also desperately in need of someone who could help shoulder the growing workload. My previous assistant had left to have a baby, and I had been trying to do everything myself for nearly 2 months. Emily seemed perfect, eager, talented, and apparently devoted to my vision for the company. For the first year, she was everything I could have hoped for in an assistant. She arrived early, stayed late, and anticipated my needs before I expressed them. She took thorough notes during client meetings, offered insightful suggestions for campaigns, and charmed everyone she encountered at the office. I began to rely on her more and more, gradually giving her greater responsibilities and creative freedom. "You have an incredible eye for detail," I told her during her first performance review. "I am impressed with how quickly you have grasped our company philosophy and aesthetic." "I just try to think like you would," she replied with that bright smile I would come to despise. "What would Vanessa do?" That is my mantra. By her second year, I had promoted her to Associate Creative Director. We worked closely together on major campaigns, and I began introducing her to my most important clients. I even invited her to industry events as my plus one, proud to show off this protégée I had discovered and mentored. What I did not realize was that Emily was playing a long game. It began subtly. A client would mention in passing, "Emily had such a brilliant insight about our rebranding." Or, "That concept Emily presented really captured exactly what we were looking for." Small redirections of credit that seemed innocuous enough at the time. After all, we were a team, and her success reflected well on me as her mentor. Then I started noticing discrepancies in our communication with clients. Emails I had not been copied on, meetings scheduled when I was out of town, strategy decisions discussed without my input. "Oh, I thought I had included you on that thread," she would say with a concerned frown when confronted. "It was just a preliminary discussion anyway. Nothing was finalized." Or, "They specifically asked for a quick meeting, and I knew you were swamped with the Peterson pitch." I was trying to protect your time. Always a reasonable explanation. Always delivered with apparent sincerity and concern for my well-being. I might have caught on sooner if I had not been distracted by my personal life. I had started dating Michael, a successful architect I met through a client, and for the first time since my divorce, I was allowing myself to believe in the possibility of a serious relationship again. Michael was thoughtful, stable, and understood the demands of running a creative business. For the first time in years, I occasionally left work at a reasonable hour to meet him for dinner or a show. Emily was supportive of the relationship, even encouraging. "You work too hard," she told me. "It is good to see you making time for yourself. Do not worry about things here. I can handle whatever comes up." And so I relaxed my vigilance, both professionally and personally. That was my mistake. The betrayal unfolded in layers, like a masterfully orchestrated campaign. Which I suppose it was. First came the business side. I returned from a rare week-long vacation with Michael to discover that Holcomb Industries, our biggest client, had requested that Emily be the lead on their upcoming product launch. They were very specific, my account manager explained uncomfortably. They said they responded to Emily's creative direction on the last project, and wanted her handling this one from start to finish. The Holcomb account represented nearly 30% of our annual revenue. I could not afford to lose them, so I agreed, though the request stung. I told myself it was ultimately still my company, my vision. Emily was simply executing it well enough that clients were noticing. It is fine, I assured my concerned account manager. Emily has earned their trust. That reflects well on all of us. Within 3 months, 2 more major clients had made similar requests. Emily was now leading our 3 largest accounts. In meetings, my team increasingly looked to her for direction rather than to me. I found myself relegated to administrative duties, while Emily became the creative heart of Morgan Creative, a company I had named after myself. Still, I might have found a way to adapt to this shifting dynamic if the personal betrayal had not followed. It happened at our annual Industry Awards Gala. I had been nominated for Creative Director of the Year, an honor I had narrowly missed twice before. Michael had come as my date, handsome in his tuxedo and genuinely excited for me. Emily was there too, nominated in the Rising Star category, for work she had done on the Holcomb campaign. The evening started wonderfully. My company won in several smaller categories, and I beamed with pride each time a member of my team took the stage. I even cheered enthusiastically when Emily won her Rising Star award, genuinely happy for her success despite the recent tensions I had been feeling. I would not be here without my amazing mentor, Vanessa Morgan, she said during her acceptance speech, turning to look at me in the audience. Everything I know about this industry, I learned from her. The words should have warmed me. Instead, something in her tone sent a chill down my spine. I excused myself shortly after her speech, needing a moment alone to gather my thoughts before the Creative Director category was announced. In the elegant bathroom of the hotel ballroom, I took deep breaths and reminded myself that Emily's success did not diminish my own. There was room for both of us to shine. When I returned to the ballroom, I could not immediately find Michael at our table. Assuming he had stepped out himself, I took my seat and made small talk with colleagues from other agencies. After 10 minutes passed with no sign of him, I sent a quick text asking where he was. No response. Finally, just as the MC began introducing the Creative Director nominees, Michael slid back into his seat beside me, slightly flushed. "Where were you?" I whispered. "Just getting some air," he replied, not meeting my eyes. Something was wrong. I could feel it. But before I could press him further, they called my name as one of the nominees, and the camera was suddenly on me. I forced a smile as they displayed samples of my work on the big screens throughout the ballroom. I did not win. The award went to a respected colleague from a larger agency, and I applauded politely, swallowing my disappointment. As the evening wound down, I noticed Michael checking his phone repeatedly, a slight frown on his face. "Is everything okay?" I asked as we gathered our things to leave. "Fine," he said quickly. "Just a work thing." But it was not fine. Over the next 2 weeks, he became increasingly distant. Our dates grew shorter, his excuses more frequent. Then came the conversation I had been dreading. In a quiet corner of the restaurant, where we had had our first date. "I think we need to take a break," he said, studying his water glass intently. "Things have been moving very quickly, and I am not sure I am ready." "This is rather sudden," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. 2 weeks ago, you were talking about taking me to meet your parents." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I know. I am sorry. I have just been doing a lot of thinking." "Is there someone else?" I asked directly. "No," he answered too quickly. "No, nothing like that." But I knew he was lying. After he dropped me at my apartment that night with a stilted hug and promises to stay friends, I sat on my couch for hours, replaying every recent interaction, looking for clues I had missed. It took another 3 weeks to discover the truth, and when it came, it was Emily once again at the center of the betrayal. One of my designers, Zoe, who had been with me since nearly the beginning, came into my office early one morning, closing the door behind her. "I am not sure if I should be telling you this," she began hesitantly, "but I saw something last night that did not seem right." She had been at a small jazz club downtown when she spotted Michael and Emily in a dark corner, holding hands across the table, clearly intimate. When they kissed, Zoe had quickly left, uncomfortable with what she was witnessing. "I know you and Michael broke up," she said gently, "but the timing seemed suspicious. And the way Emily has been acting lately, I thought you should know. The revelation should have devastated me. But strangely, it brought clarity. All the pieces suddenly fit together. Emily's late nights at the office, her convenient absences when Michael came to meet me, the sudden cooling of his affection after the awards gala, where she had won while I had lost. I thanked Zoe for her loyalty and asked her to keep this information to herself. Then I began investigating in earnest. It did not take much digging to uncover the extent of Emily's betrayal. A casual conversation with our IT administrator revealed that she had been steadily downloading our client files, campaign strategies, and contact lists for months. Our receptionist mentioned Emily had been holding meetings with our biggest clients at outside locations, ostensibly for creative brainstorming, that somehow never made it into our official calendars. Most damning of all, a former colleague now working at a rival agency called to give me a heads up. Emily had interviewed there the previous week, bringing along a portfolio filled with work she claimed primary creative direction on, work that I had conceptualized and led. She is presenting herself as the real creative force behind Morgan Creative, my colleague informed me. She is telling people you are more of a business manager these days, that the recent award-winning campaigns were actually her concepts that you signed off on. I sat with this knowledge for days, cycling through rage, hurt, and eventually a cold, clear determination. Emily had systematically undermined me professionally, while personally betraying me with the first man I had trusted since my divorce. She had studied me, identified what mattered most to me, and methodically set about taking it for herself. This was not a situation for confrontation or ultimatums. Emily was too skilled at manipulation, too practiced at turning situations to her advantage. A direct accusation would only give her the opportunity to spin more lies, possibly damaging my relationships with clients and staff even further. No, this required a different approach. This required patience, planning, and precision, all qualities I had cultivated building my business from nothing. This required revenge. I began by securing what was most important, my company. Late-night conversations with my lawyer resulted in new non-compete and confidentiality agreements for all employees, which I presented as routine updates to our policies as the company grew. Everyone signed without question, including Emily, who likely assumed her downloading of company materials had gone unnoticed. Next, I strengthened my client relationships. I scheduled one-on-one lunches and dinners with the decision-makers at our major accounts, carefully highlighting the strategic thinking behind our successful campaigns, subtly but firmly re-establishing my role as the creative leader of the company. Emily is certainly talented, I would say graciously when her name inevitably came up, and I have enjoyed mentoring her. She executes my vision beautifully. Simultaneously, I reached out to my network of industry contacts, sharing concerns about a hypothetical situation involving an ambitious employee potentially preparing to poach clients. The responses were supportive and enlightening, with several people sharing similar experiences and offering both sympathy and practical advice. Throughout all of this, I maintained a warm, mentoring relationship with Emily. I praised her work, included her in important meetings, and gave no indication that I was aware of her duplicity. I even asked after Michael occasionally, as if I had no knowledge of their relationship. "Oh, we bumped into each other at a networking event," she said the first time I mentioned him, studying my face for any sign of suspicion. "He mentioned you two had decided to go separate ways." "Yes," I replied with a wistful smile. "Sometimes timing is just wrong. He is a great guy, though." Her relief was palpable. "Yes, he seemed really nice." Piece by piece, I built my case and my protection. I documented every instance of Emily taking credit for my work, every unauthorized client meeting, every downloaded file. I gathered statements from team members about directions she had given that contradicted my instructions. I created a comprehensive record of her systematic attempt to undermine and replace me at my own company. And then I waited for her to make her final move. It came sooner than I expected. Just 4 months after I began my counter-campaign, Emily requested a meeting to discuss her future at the company. I have loved working here, she began, her expression earnest, but I feel I have grown as much as I can in my current role. I nodded encouragingly. I would like to propose a new structure, she continued, producing a folder with neatly printed documents. I have drafted a plan where I would take over as creative director, overseeing all client campaigns and creative output. You would retain the CEO title, focusing on business development and operations, which would free you from the day-to-day creative pressures. It was breathtaking in its audacity, asking me to step away from the creative role that was the very heart of my company, the work I had built my reputation on. This is an interesting proposal, I said mildly, accepting the folder. What brought this on? She was prepared for the question. Several of our major clients have specifically requested my involvement in their campaigns. And honestly, Vanessa, I think you have seemed overwhelmed lately. This would allow you better work-life balance while leveraging both our strengths. The concern in her voice was so convincing that for a moment, I almost doubted myself. Had I been overwhelmed? Was I holding the company back? No. This was exactly the gaslighting technique she had employed repeatedly, making me question my own perceptions, my own value. You make some good points, I said thoughtfully. Let me review this in detail. Can we meet again next week to discuss? She left my office visibly pleased, no doubt already mentally redecorating the creative director's office, my office, with her awards and inspirational quotes. The next week passed in a blur of activity. I consulted with my lawyer one final time, confirming that everything was in place. I spoke privately with key team members I trusted completely. I reached out to our most important clients with special invitations. Everything was ready. When Emily arrived for our follow-up meeting, she found not just me but the entire leadership team waiting in the conference room. Her momentary confusion quickly gave way to a confident smile, likely assuming this was an announcement of her promotion. Thank you all for being here, I began, my voice steady. I have asked you to join us because what I am about to discuss affects everyone in this room and the future of Morgan Creative. Emily straightened in her chair, smoothing her skirt. Last week, Emily proposed a restructuring of our leadership, with herself assuming the role of creative director, while I stepped back to focus solely on business operations. Murmurs around the table. Emily nodded, still smiling. This proposal came as no surprise to me, I continued. In fact, it was the culmination of what appears to be a carefully orchestrated campaign to supplant me at my own company. The smile froze on Emily's face. Over the next 30 minutes, I methodically presented the evidence I had gathered. The unauthorized client meetings, the downloaded files, the misrepresented creative work, the statements from team members. I did so not with anger but with calm professionalism, treating it as I would any other business challenge requiring resolution. Additionally, I said, turning to the large screen at the end of the conference room, I have invited several clients to join us virtually for this discussion. The screen came to life, showing a video conference with the key decision-makers from our 5 largest accounts, including Holcomb Industries. Emily's face drained of color. Good morning, everyone, I greeted them. Thank you for making time for this. As I mentioned when we spoke individually, we have been dealing with an internal situation that potentially impacts your accounts. One by one, I shared with them specific examples of how Emily had misrepresented her role in their campaigns, showing original concept documents with my creative direction alongside the final work she had claimed as her own. I presented email threads she had excluded me from and notes from meetings scheduled when I was unavailable. While I take responsibility for the management issues that allowed this situation to develop, I concluded, I wanted to be transparent with you about what has happened and assure you that we are taking steps to ensure the creative integrity and continuity of your accounts. The clients were stunned but appreciative of the honesty. Several immediately confirmed their commitment to staying with the agency, with me as their creative lead. Throughout this presentation, Emily sat motionless, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and finally, a calculating assessment of her options. When I finished speaking, she leaned forward. This is a completely distorted picture, she began, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Vanessa has been increasingly disconnected from the creative work, frequently unavailable, and actually, interrupted the CMO of Holcomb Industries from the screen. The concepts Vanessa has shown us today are exactly what sold us on your agency in the first place. If she was not involved in our recent campaigns as you led us to believe, that is deeply concerning. One after another, the clients expressed similar sentiments. The leadership team around the table sat in uncomfortable silence. Emily's carefully constructed narrative was collapsing in real time. When the video conference ended, I turned to my team. I would like to continue this discussion internally now. Thank you all for your patience. Emily's termination was executed with the same precision as everything else. Her company accounts were already disabled. Security waited to escort her to clear her desk, with an IT person present to ensure no additional files left the premises. The non-compete and confidentiality agreements she had signed would prevent her from approaching our clients for at least 12 months. As she stood to leave, defeated but still somehow defiant, I had one final revelation to deliver. I almost forgot, I said, reaching into my folder. These were delivered to the office this morning. I slid an elegant cream-colored envelope across the table. Wedding invitations. Michael and his longtime girlfriend Alyssa were finally tying the knot after 7 years together. Apparently their brief separation last year did not last, I remarked casually. According to the announcement, they have been engaged since Christmas. Emily stared at the invitation, the final piece of her carefully constructed world crumbling. Michael had been using her just as she had been using me. You knew, she said quietly. All this time. Not all this time, I admitted. But long enough. As security prepared to escort her out, she paused at the door. How did you do it? Get the clients back on your side so completely? I allowed myself a small smile. I told the truth, Emily. I showed them the original work, the original concepts. I reminded them why they chose Morgan Creative in the first place. And unlike you, I never underestimated them. They know authentic creativity when they see it. After she was gone, the office sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, my operations director spoke up. I had no idea this was happening, he said, shaking his head. She seemed so genuine, so dedicated to the company. She was an excellent performer, I acknowledged. In every sense of the word. The months that followed were challenging, but ultimately strengthening for the company. We lost one minor client who had formed a personal connection with Emily, but the major accounts not only stayed, but expanded their work with us. My leadership team, shaken by the experience, recommitted to our collective vision with renewed enthusiasm. As for me, the experience changed something fundamental in how I viewed both my company and myself. I had built Morgan Creative from nothing, through talent, perseverance, and integrity. I had survived a calculated attempt to steal what I had created. And in defending what was mine, I had discovered reserves of strategic thinking and quiet strength I had not known I possessed. Emily attempted to find work at several competing agencies, but found doors mysteriously closed. Not because I had spoken against her. I never mentioned her name in industry circles. But because the truth of what she had done traveled through the network of relationships I had built over years in the business. Creative directors talked. Clients compared notes. Her reputation crumbled under the weight of her own actions. Last I heard, she had left Chicago entirely, moving to the West Coast to try her luck in a different market. Michael and Alyssa did get married, though I declined the invitation to attend. Some connections are better left severed completely. Sometimes at night, when I am alone in my office putting final touches on a campaign concept, or reviewing the portfolio of a promising young designer, I think about Emily and what drove her to betray me so completely. Was it pure ambition, envy, or something more complex? A belief that taking what others had built was easier than creating something of her own. I will never know. What I do know is that revenge, when executed with precision and patience, can be a creative act in itself. Not born from hot-blooded rage, but from cool-headed strategy. Not seeking to destroy, but to reveal truth and restore balance. My company continues to thrive. I am more selective now about who I mentor, and how much of myself I invest in those relationships. But I have not become cynical or closed off. Instead, I am wiser, more discerning, and paradoxically, more confident in my own value and vision. Some might say the best revenge is living well. I would add that the best revenge is living authentically, being exactly who you are and creating exactly what only you can create, despite those who would try to diminish or appropriate your gifts. In the end, Emily taught me something valuable, though not what she intended. She showed me that what I had built was worth fighting for, that my creative voice was worth defending, and that when pushed to my limits, I was stronger than even I had believed. For that unintended lesson, I suppose I should thank her, but I never will.